I'm Ellis Martin. Join me now as we take a trip to Australia to visit with Iggy Tan, the Managing Director of Altech Batteries Limited, trading as ATC on the ASX. Mr. Tan is a highly experienced mining and chemical executive with a number of significant achievements in commercial mining projects, such as capital raisings, funding, construction, startups, and operations. Mr. Tan has over 30 years of chemical and mining experience and has been an executive director of a number of ASX-listed companies. Today I'm joining Iggy at the International Mining and Resources Conference in Sydney, Australia. Iggy, it is fantastic to see you here in Sydney. Thanks so much for coming out to meet me all the way from Perth.
Yeah, welcome to Australia, Alice.
I love this country.
Yeah?
It's so organized and there's a work ethic that I haven't seen in a long, long time.
This is the International Mining Conference here in Sydney, so a lot of mining companies here. So
the organizers of this event, they ask me to speak from time to time, no matter where I'm at in the world, and I have to think of what to say every time I get in front of the microphone.
So you were on a panel here?
I was yesterday, absolutely.
Yeah, and what was the topic?
The topic was battery metals.
Oh, right, okay.
Exactly what we're going to talk about today, I think. And I've got to tell you, I have a real problem, Iggy, and I think we touched on this the last time you and I got together over a Zoom call, not in person like this. You're a very tall man. I expected somebody a little shorter for some reason. We're the same height. Anyway, moving on, I have a Tesla, and it's one of these Model S Plaids, and it was promised 390 miles of range. I think that's something around 500 kilometers, and I'm lucky if I get 150 to 200 miles to the plug-in. And I see these batteries as deteriorating over time. You know a lot about the technology. Why aren't they not working? What is Elon Musk going to do about it, in your opinion?
Well, as you know, a couple of years ago, Tesla in their open day announced the increased use of silicon, metallurgical silicon, in lithium-ion batteries. So, as you know, Alice, in a lithium battery, there's the cathode, and then there's the anode. The anode is generally graphite and copper, and there's a lot of development in the cathode over the last decade, but not a lot of development on the negative part, which is the anode. And Elon Musk came out and said the future of their batteries will contain more silicon on the anode part. Now, just to give you a context of why the importance of silicon, silicon has 10 times the capacity to hold lithium than graphite. So for a layperson, there are 10 times more hooks that lithium can sit on when you charge and discharge the battery. So you can see by incorporating silicon, you can increase the density of the battery, which means your Tesla goes longer and faster.
Why isn't that being done now?
Well, silicon has two problems. So the question is, if silicon is such a great anode material, why isn't it incorporated in batteries today? Well, it has two major problems that the industry have been trying to solve. Firstly, silicon expands 300% in volume when you charge and discharge the battery, and it sort of delaminates on the anode side. So that's problem number one. The second problem is that it's got a very large first cycle loss. So when you first charge the battery, lithium goes across and 40% of the lithium doesn't come back. It gets incorporated on the surface and becomes inactive to the battery. So the battery industry calls it the first cycle loss. Graphite has got about 8%. So did you know that 8% of your lithium before it leaves in the factory is when you first charge it, doesn't play any further part. So the industry's been trying to resolve this first cycle loss.
I noticed that there was a large amount of first cycle loss after the first couple of times that I charged my car.
Yeah.
Dramatic decrease in range, and you're saying that's what that is?
Yeah, so essentially those are the two problems with silicon, and the industry's been trying to resolve those two problems, the expansion and the first cycle loss.
How does Tesla sell all these cars with that knowledge in hand to begin with?
They are trying to expand the capacity of the batteries, and the future is these metallurgical silicon particles.
So nobody's doing it right so far?
Well, they're trying to resolve that problem.
Okay.
So we've got technology that virtually cracks the silicon code. Alice, what we do is we coat each silicon particle with a fine layer of alumina. 2 microns. So a micron is 1,000 of a millimeter.
What is alumina?
Alumina is aluminum oxide.
Okay.
Right? So if you can coat the particle with alumina it resolves two problems. It keeps the expansion from creating problems. And secondly, it resolves the first cycle loss. It's like a pre-coating. It stops the lithium from sticking to it on the first charge, but it allows the lithium to go through it during the performance of the battery. So last year or the year before, we announced that we cracked the silicon code and we produced batteries that are 30% higher energy density because of this alumina coating. And we call this alumina anodes, right? Our product is alumina anodes, and this is very exciting technology.
Wow. So you're saying that I won't experience that, or owners of new Teslas or EVs won't experience that severe first cycle loss.
And also, you will get an increased energy density if we can incorporate silicon. So the technique we use is very simple. We don't try to make alumina first and try to use that powder to coat the silicon. We make it in situ in the chemical plant. We buy metallurgical silicon, we coat it with a alumina liquid precursor, and then we calcine it and make alumina in situ. When you make alumina, you start with aluminum chloride, and then when you heat it up to 400 degrees, it becomes aluminum. So we create this 2 nanometer layer of alumina around the silicon, and that essentially cracks the silicon code.
What's the durability over time?
Well, we have part of the development is to incorporate these in batteries and then run these batteries over many, many cycles to see the performance of it. So we have run these batteries over many, many cycles, and we consistently show that it's already at 30% higher energy density than the batteries that just have graphite.
Is this proprietary technology, or are other people doing it?
Yeah, our chief scientist, Dr. Jinwan Liu, developed the technology. We have patents on it, and we're also commercializing it. So we have plans to build a 10,000 ton per annum alumina anode plant in Germany, in Saxony, Germany, next to our Serenergy battery project. So essentially we buy silicon, we buy graphite, we coat it with our alumina coating, we put it together as a alumina anode material, and then we sell it to the battery makers to use that to then increase the density of their batteries.
So you're not selling directly to the automotive groups, you're selling it to the battery makers.
Well, yes, and you know, a lot of the automotive group are now becoming battery makers, a bit like Tesla. They realize that essentially an EV is a battery on wheels.
So I've been avoiding the question, but I'll ask it now. Are you having talks with these end users like Tesla?
Well, we have NDAs with some large automakers, and they're waiting for commercial samples. So at the moment, our laboratory in Perth can only produce small samples. So we have to build a pilot plant, and we're in final commissioning of a pilot plant, about the $6 million pilot plant in Germany. And then we have the ability to produce commercial samples, and then we can send it to some of our potential customers who will then go through a qualification process. The US is the other market. As you know, Ford, GM, Tesla are all building battery plants.
In Europe, we're talking Ford, GM, Volvo, BMW, Mercedes, all those automakers over there.
Absolutely, and also the grid storage market. So people that are building batteries for grid storage, which I talked about last time.
Right.
Grid storage batteries are essentially decoupling, resolving the intermittent problems of renewable energy. So when the sun's shining during the day, you're generating power, but how do you harness that power and shift that towards the night time? You need big batteries. So the world needs batteries going forward, and everybody's looking at improving the performance of these batteries and bringing the cost down. So something like alumina anodes will do that.
You'll be proving this out in Europe, and then perhaps you'll move into the U.S. as a secondary but large market at some point, right?
Absolutely, and with the IRA Act, I'm sure that will be a worthy destination for a second plant.
I'm surprised you're not in California yet, but I guess that it's so restrictive there with regard to regulation. You need to prove this out in Europe first, don't you?
You've got to start somewhere. Very exciting technology developed within the company. We own the IP, and very excited to, in the next quarter or so, to release a definitive feasibility study. We then go to financing of the project. We're looking at grants, green bonds, and equity.
They exist in Europe, don't they?
Yeah, well, grants, as you know, there's a lot of money in Europe looking for green projects like the IRA Act. We've started the grant application, so very confident that we'll get the funding through grants and then bonds as well as equity.
And then you become everybody's friend. It's not you against the world or one manufacturer over another. Everybody's going to want you.
Exactly. So very exciting technology.
This is really, really fascinating. I had no idea until this conversation that you were doing this. I mean, I looked at the website. I didn't quite get it. Hearing it broken down like you've explained to me just makes a lot of sense. It's very exciting. And it's almost the opposite of what we discussed last time, the sodium chloride battery.
Well, we have actually a leg in both camps. So we have a leg in the lithium-ion battery camp. The lithium-ion battery is not going to go away. It's a great battery. It's the battery of the future.
You took the words out of my mouth because there's some talk now about it going away, but in your opinion, that's just not ever going to happen.
Well, the lithium battery was developed in 1950s by Mitsubishi, and it's taken that long to be commercialized in such a grand scale. So it's never going away. And, every week you read a report about an alternative battery or some sort, but it's early development. It takes a long time to get to market and commercialize.
Are these new silica-based batteries going to be retrofitted into, let's say, my Tesla when it becomes 5 years old by the time your technology hits the market?
Yeah, we call it drop-in technology.
Ooh.
You don't have to change the battery plant. You don't have to modify it. Basically, you would buy graphite, you would put it into your tanks and you add binders, and then you would coat the graphite onto copper plates. There's no change. You would just buy our material, which has 10% silicon. That's it. There's another 10% silicon in the graphite. But what it does, it boosts that graphite by nearly 30% in energy capacity.
We're at one of the biggest mining conferences in the world right now. Not the biggest one, but one of the biggest. And a lot of these companies in the space have a problem with permitting, with legislation, with all these things that drag a project out 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 years. None of that exists here, I take it. None of that exists here, I take it.
Well, Australia is a country that develops projects quickly. In my previous background with lithium, we developed a mining project and a concentrator. From maiden resource, building a concentrator and first product out in 3 years, including permitting. Now, that's probably unheard of in the North American market.
Completely.
But Australians are good at developing mining projects.
Iggy, it's been a pleasure to sit down and chat with you in person and learn about this technology. I can't wait until it's been proven out in the pilot plant and I get to retrofit my car with it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today in the program.
Thanks for having me, Alice.
I've been speaking with Iggy Tan, Managing Director of Altech Batteries Limited, trading on the ASX as ATC. Visit the company's website, altechgroup.com. Questions, comments? Head to our website, ellismartinreport.com. I'm Ellis Martin.
Subscribe to the Ellis Martin newsletter. It's free. Go to ellismartinreport.com and fill out the quick and easy pop-up form.